everyone, and welcome to a special spoiler podcast on Breaking Bad. I'm Captain Logan, and with me I have Steve Baxi.
Hello.
Known to some of you as Death God Storm, and I've got Alex, known to some of you as SuperheroEnthusiast.
I am the danger.
Wait, what is that a reference to?
The show that we're discussing, Breaking Bad.
Wait, the danger?
Oh, I remember that quote.
Yeah, he says...
Yeah, we are really not prepared for this.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah, it took me a minute. I know exactly. Look, every time Alex says something, I expect a superhero reference, so I thought he was going in a Darkwing Duck direction, and...
Well, he is the enthusiast.
Missed opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. No, now I know exactly what you're talking about. And by the way, may I say that was a really creepy moment.
Oh,
I am the one who knocks.
Okay, so we're going to go round robin like we do on a lot of the spoiler podcasts. We're going to start with a best thing, worst thing for Breaking Bad. Now, we're going to be talking about this as the entire series and not just kind of analyzing the last episode or something, or like the last season. So we're going to kind of jump all over the place and talk about this series as a whole. I feel like this is a show that is very easy to do with because it is one ongoing narrative with, I think, a character that has a complete straight-up character arc from beginning to end over a 5-season narrative, which is beautiful and awesome, and we'll talk about that. So we're going to start with Steve because he volunteered, and Steve, give us a best thing about the show and a worst thing, or at least your favorite and your least favorite.
Okay.
Thing.
The best thing I have to say is how they play up the Heisenberg and Walt and where the line is drawn. Because you see a lot of discussions about what's the most evil thing that Walt's ever done, when did Heisenberg take over, but when you sit down and try to rewatch some of the first episodes, it's hard to tell whether or not Heisenberg actually emerged at some point or if he was always there, just hiding under the subtext, and that's always really interesting to think about. And my worst thing would have to be that I think it's the second half of season 5 is Walt's 52nd or 51st birthday. I don't buy that the first 5 seasons happen in 1 year. That one long timeline just doesn't make sense to me.
Oh, wow. I don't even kind of agree with you.
Really?
Yeah, but we can talk about that.
I kept wondering,
I just think that he builds his empire and people know the name Heisenberg, and there's just too much that seems to go on. I don't think it happened in just 1 year.
Well, yeah, I mean... Huh. Okay, we'll have to talk about it. I hadn't even really thought about that.
What's his name? There's that guy Declan, where Walt says, "Say my name," and the guy says Heisenberg. He doesn't say the name Heisenberg enough in the show for me to believe that he would just know his name off the cuff.
I think maybe people in the drug community know who he is, though.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, because the blue meth is everywhere.
Maybe.
It's associated with that. And also, you got to remember that he took out a couple of huge major names. So I mean, once Tuco's gone, it's who killed him? They made me buy that with that song that those Hispanic guys were singing about Heisenberg.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I love that. That was so funny. But that was in, I don't know, was that season 2, season 3? Once that happened, I was like, yeah, the word's gotten around. The whole drug community knows this. And then they got it out worldwide, too.
Well, the worldwide thing happened later.
No, I know. But I'm just saying that, within a year, I buy that all these people know who Heisenberg is.
I guess I buy it up to a point. When you get to the worldwide thing, Heisenberg's already kind of established. But before then, Walt doesn't even go by the name of Heisenberg very often.
No, he doesn't, but that's a thing he started on accident, which I always thought was kind of a cool idea.
Yeah, it was a cool idea, but I don't even think what's his name, Tuco. Tuco didn't even brag about Heisenberg before he was killed. And when he was with Gus, he never used the name Heisenberg, at least for maybe for 1 or 2 episodes. That's about it.
Well, you might be onto something.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm just nitpicking because this show is really, really dense and really, really interesting. But
he's like, "What do you want from me? I can't think of a worse thing, so I just said something."
Well, that was always the one thing that bothered me throughout the entire series. So.
Oh, yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, Alex, do you have a best thing, worst thing?
Best thing is the evil goatee, and Um, the worst thing, I'll maybe connect the worst thing to what Steve said, in that I never felt like we got much of a like 1,000 foot view of what was going on in the show. Like we never saw a whole lot of like news reports and stuff, and kind of, how much is the blue meth taking over? What is the reputation of Heisenberg? That sort of thing. We always kind of like hear people referencing to things, um, but it's like we never really get that outside view. We're so in it, and that's maybe, not necessarily a bad thing, but would have been nice at times to kind of see the wider effects.
Yeah, then the reputations are kind of left to be a bit ambiguous, which is kind of not an issue, but it just makes you wonder.
Hmm.
Well, I'm gonna say that my best thing is just the format and the scale of the show. The way that as I've said on some other videos, that I feel like this is a novel in television form, and I haven't really seen that before. I've seen attempts at something somewhat like it, but I like how it stays intimate and it never gets too big, and yet the scope feels pretty large, but it stays. And this is maybe even kind of the opposite of what Alex's worst thing was. but I kind of like that it stays with this close knit group of people, and it never allows itself to turn into like a giant like comic book scale thing like I kept feeling like it had the possibility to, because I've heard a lot of people talk about Walter White as like a supervillain, and I really like that idea, just in connecting that to pop culture and looking at kind of how that all breaks down, and how he kind he's kind of like that. It's interesting, but I like how it stays more or less realistic. I mean, this feels like something that could maybe potentially happen. And I really thought that by the last episode we were going to have like some giant like Walter White takes over the whole city kind of plot, or
Yeah.
like he gets in a huge giant firefight with like everybody. And I was surprised that they didn't go there, and that it stayed consistent. It stayed as what it was from the beginning. And Walter White feels like the same person all the way through. He goes through a transformation, and when they, by the way, by the last episode, when they show you some, or maybe the second, maybe I'm thinking the second to last episode, when you see some footage of him from like the very beginning of putting this together, and you're reminded just how different he looked. It's really interesting to see that progression, but this isn't a guy who like suddenly becomes this huge giant mastermind. He always had those things in him, and he really is just this insecure high school teacher that wanted to be something more. And I love that it stayed with that and never left that. Worst thing, I'm probably going to come up with something better later, because I'm having a hard time thinking well, I mean, I can think of little irritating things that I just don't really like here and there, but nothing that I feel like warrants like this is the worst thing about this show. It took me a long time to come around on Marie.
Yeah, I'm with you with
Yeah, I
that.
agree.
And one of the reasons that I had a tough time with that is because I felt like it was doing a very typical TV thing early on, by trying to give her especially, but certain characters, like some kind of a flaw to just add extra drama that maybe had nothing to do with anything. And unless you guys can think of some way this plays in that I never noticed, they really dropped that whole kleptomania thing.
They do. They do. I
Yeah,
can't
they
think of any way it connects.
It's on after the first season.
well, they have like these offhand references to like a psychiatrist she sees for it, but there's never any solution for it. We never meet the guy, and it just kind of goes away.
See, I got to the point where I forgot why she was seeing a psychiatrist.
Yeah,
You mean like I forgot about the kleptomania, and after a while I remembered it, but not because of that. I was just like, wait, what happened to that thing where she was stealing things and giving them to people? So there's some inconsistencies here and there, and I really need to go back. And again, like Steve said earlier, we're not 100% prepared in the sense that we've like rewatched the show or something. Um, and I want to bring this up because I haven't gone back and rewatched the first episode since obviously I finished watching the whole show, and I'm trying to remember how this worked. Wasn't there like a tape or something that he was making the first time he made meth, or the first time we saw him making meth? in the first episode where he was making like some kind of a tape for his family or something, and then it's
Yeah.
never wrapped.
Yes,
And
there was.
am I wrong about this?
No,
No,
there
you're right.
was.
So what was that? Was that wrapped up somehow and I missed it, or?
Well, he thought that they were going to be arrested, so he made kind of a like a an explanation tape for his family, kind of a thing. Well, or I guess it was sort of a suicide note because he was going to shoot himself, but the gun misfires. Um,
Oh, that's right. Okay, I guess I expected that to come back somewhere because it's evidence.
well, yeah, unless it got erased. I can't remember. It was a long time ago that I saw
Yeah,
that stuff.
exactly.
But
Maybe like it could have been buried with the money or something. I just like I was expected to see that come back, and then I wonder if maybe they forgot about it.
I'm
I'm
sure
starting to
somebody
remember
remembers.
maybe he destroyed that tape at some point.
Maybe so. Yeah, maybe I'm just remembering it wrong. But anyway, this is simply just me asking you guys if you remembered that. So where should we start? Well, when you get a big long form thing like this, my favorite place to start is always at the end. Were you guys satisfied with the way Walter White goes out?
Yes.
Kind of, mostly, I guess.
I feel that way too, Alex. Go ahead.
um, I don't know. I was hoping for something bleaker, maybe. I wanted a little bit more of a crime doesn't pay kind of a message because he sort of gets everything that he wants at the end. I mean, he was gonna die anyway because he had the cancer, and he's able to
Yeah.
get the money to his family. And yeah, a lot of people die along the way, and he does a lot of harm. And through the process of becoming an evil drug kingpin, he gets some sense of agency in his life. And that's maybe a little bit too good for him in some sense. But um, I'm a big Sopranos fan, and a lot of people don't like the ending to that show, and I think it was perfect. Um, and Breaking Bad is close, I think, but there are some issues with it that I have, I guess.
Alex, when you get to the end, do you feel like Walter finds himself vindicated?
I think he kind of feels that. I mean, again, it kind of goes back to he was going to die and lose his family anyway. It just ended up being this kind of horrifying, long, drawn out process. And, he ultimately did accomplish what he originally set out to do. So I think so a little bit. In his mind, anyway.
Because one of the things I did really appreciate is that he has, I think, a major turning point in his character arc right at the end, where, and I mean his overall character arc, where he finally admits that he didn't do this for his family, he did it for himself.
I think I th- I kind of wonder when exactly he figured that out.
Yeah,
Um, I think it might be in the episode where he leaves at the end, goes to the vacuum cleaner repair shop, which I thought was cool. Um, and he
oh,
sees his family, and it's kind of like the like warped view of them, and they seem really far away. And I think that's when he's kind of realized like, oh, like this hasn't worked out the way that I thought, or maybe I haven't done this for the reasons that I thought, or I've been blind to this in in some way. But yeah, he does admit at the end that yeah, he did it for himself and he felt alive,
Well,
which
maybe
is
I
what
read
we've
it
all known from the
wrong.
beginning.
yeah, which we knew from the beginning. Yeah, what I thought was really sad and disturbing throughout a lot of the later stuff, especially, is how he keeps justifying it to himself, all of the terrible things he's done, as I'm doing this for my family. But he very early on stops seeing both of his major family members as people.
Yeah, because he has to manipulate them in order to make the math to help them.
Yeah, and once Skylar figures it out, he's very quick to start being really controlling. And there's that really, again, kind of disturbing moment when she says, "I'm not your wife, I'm your prisoner." And I think he finds a way to be okay with that.
Well, maybe I read that ending wrong, but I didn't see it so much as him admitting that he was doing the wrong thing as much as he's just embracing it now. So when he's okay with his wife being his prisoner, or he's okay with how many horrible things he's had to do to get this money, it just seems like um it doesn't matter anymore. Like there was this really cool struggle going on in the show because people say that there's a point where Heisenberg shows up and Walt slowly becomes him. I disagree in the sense that from the first episode, we see Walt has this weird uncontrolled rage. Like when he quits the car wash, he just gets angry and it's really uncharacteristic. When those kids are bullying his son in that clothing store, he walks out and beats up one of them. So he always had this rage in him. So when you get to the ending, it's not so much him saying that what he's doing is wrong, is it's him finally not wrestling with the duality he has, and it's just him saying, "Yep, I'm a bad person, but what can you do?"
See, I'm not sure about that because then how do you read the scene when he's out at the cabin and then he goes to that pub where he talks to his son and his son refuses to take the money? So there he's ready to just be taken in by the police because everything he's done is for nothing, he thinks at that
Well,
point?
then he also has that thing he sees on the TV with the with Elliot and his wife about the
Right.
Empire. So that when the Empire thing just ticks in his head, he realizes that it hasn't been about his family in a very long time. So he just finds a way of being okay with that because he knows.
See, I didn't read that like that. I saw it as he had completely given up. Like there was he couldn't get the money to them and he had no ideas left. And so if it was all for naught, it's time to give up and to pay your dues. Like I still think that there's a part of him that doesn't that is only okay with all the horrible things he did because he's very much a ends justifies the means character clearly,
Right.
and I feel like the idea is it's all worth it unless it doesn't work out and then everything I did was wrong. And so the thing he sees on the TV I don't think has anything to do with him deciding how he feels about everything he's done. I think that's just he suddenly came up with a new plan.
Do
Yeah,
you see
because
him as
up
being
until
regretful at the point with the phone conversation? Like, do you think he feels bad about all of it?
I think he does to a point. I think you've got two parts of him that are wrestling with each other, and I think it's completely up to everybody's interpretation how much of him is Walter White and how much of him is Heisenberg.
I don't.
I don't think there was any point where he fully, completely, and utterly embraces Heisenberg. Because if he did, like he wouldn't have done the thing with the laser pointers. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I think he had opportunities to become a giant drug lord that was way bigger than Tuco and was on the level as Gus, and he never really took that because I mean he came close a few times,
that
but
might
I don't
actually
know.
have been the way I would have liked it to have ended, where he just kind of becomes this complete and total monster and loses sight of everything. But
Yeah, well, yeah, there was a part of me that kind of wanted to see that.
because to some extent we root for Walt, even though we shouldn't, because he's a horrible person.
Yeah,
But I
absolutely.
think we can all sort of relate to some extent to lacking power in our lives and lacking a sense of agency, and that's what he gets through Breaking Bad and doing all these terrible things. And it's kind of unfortunate it has to be that way, but that allows us to relate to him and still try and justify what he does along with him as the show goes on.
Well, I think it helps that the life he has at the very beginning that we see when he first gets his cancer is pretty awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't want to be in that place. I mean, like he's mentally beat up all the time by his boss at the car wash. He has to have two jobs. Like, how sad is it that a biology teacher would need another job just to keep his family afloat? And he is completely disenfranchised with both of those avenues of employment, and there's a like obviously there's a point where I stop feeling this way and start thinking, oh, this guy needs to quit doing these horrible things he's doing. But there's a point where I say, yeah, punch that guy at the car wash, and yeah, the public school system has treated you horribly, and the world doesn't have to be just the way people think it is. Maybe you can take life by the reins and make whatever you want out of it. And then he takes that to such a far extreme and makes it about doing that at the expense of everybody. And you're like, oh, maybe you can only do that to a certain point.
And it's kind of interesting how Walt is such a bad person and people still root for him because society has this thing where um, we don't judge good and evil based on action as much as we judge it on based on intentions. So
Well, that's true. Although I don't find myself watching Walter and going, well, because he's doing it for his family, it's all okay.
that's true, but you do kind of sympathize with him because he has good reasons for doing it in the first place. And then eventually you have to decide how far is too far. So
But see, I think you can make a character that does like really heinous things like he does sympathetic by making them feel like a real person where those things come from a place. And that's what we get with Walter White. I don't know that I root for him. I think there are places where I do. I don't think I root for him so much as I care to see what happens to him.
To your point about him being a supervillain, you might compare him a little bit to Mr. Freeze then, in that he's somebody who's doing these horrible things to help a family member, but ultimately it's not good stuff.
Yeah.
yeah, and by the end of it, he doesn't really have any family to be family at all.
Hmm.
Um, One of my issues with the finale was that we didn't get any kind of resolution for his family as a whole. Like what happened with Marie and Walter Jr. and Skylar after they discover he's dead.
Well, first of all, it's Walter's story. So if you're going to and like most of the time, I think I come from kind of a traditional school of thought on this as far as storytelling goes. Most of the time, I think that it's a really ballsy move to kill off your protagonist in the first place. And so I almost don't want to see any aftermath because it's his story. It needs to begin and end with that guy.
That's true, but at the same time, they make you invested in all those other side characters that you kind of want closure for them too.
Well, I don't know. What do you think, Alex?
Um, I'm more on the side that it we don't necessarily need to see what happens with them. I think we can kind of infer to some extent that Marie's just going to be a widow and maybe she'll remarry. Um, Hank's dead. He's not going to come back. Walt Jr. hates his father, but he's going to get the money, so he's going to have to deal with kind of the legacy of being his son, especially now that the cops found Walt at the end with the Nazis meth lab, and he has that legacy. He is Heisenberg. He is the maker of the blue meth. Um, you, wherever you end a story, anytime, stuff still goes forward because life still goes on. It's just kind of a point of, well, if we continue on, well, where do we end it after that?
Yeah, that's a great point. You're talking about occasion for story. I mean, this is a story about, people who were going on in their lives, and then this guy had an opportunity to start a meth empire, and then it's through the meth empire, that's the story is this guy and his meth empire, and that was the break in status quo. And then the end of that is the end of him. So I don't feel like there is any more story about that at the point that they finish it. I sort of like leaving some of that ambiguous. And by the way, the Jesse thing drives me absolutely bonkers. Not knowing what happens to him. And I'm not saying they should have told us. I guess I'm just saying that in the way I think they want me to feel like this, I'm just like, is he crazy? Is he gonna live a happy life now? Like, I got to where I really cared about that guy and did root for that character. So, with his whole family, though, I really feel like the point is he's he got to a place in his head where it was very, very simple. It was my family needs money, and it would be wrong of me to leave them broke when I die, and leave them in impoverished because they can't come up with the money they need for my medical bills, and that's all that matters. And when he dies, nobody is happy and everybody is completely traumatized. And I think that's what's important.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Even,
that's
even,
true.
even though they're going to get that money, they'll never be happy. She didn't want that to happen for her husband. And that was a couple that I really bought were at the beginning were struggling and having a difficult time, but I could really buy the time in the life where they were madly in love with each other. And that's all really sad because imagine your spouse turning into that and you really didn't think they had that in them.
This show does flashbacks and flash forwards really well. Like when you see Walt and Skylar going to buy their house for the first time, or Walt trying to get that first lie off the ground near the end of the series, or just those flash forwards in the future when he sees the Heisenberg written into his house. All that kind of tone setting stuff is really, really engaging. And even if you don't sympathize with Walt or any of his family members by the end of the series, seeing that the first time when they step into their house is still really heartbreaking.
Oh yeah, it is, and I think it's also one of the more heartbreaking flashbacks. Also, to your point, is that again in the second to last episode when we see Walt and his wife name Holly over the phone during his first meth cook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
And now he has to rehearse that lie before he's comfortable with talking to her, and now he can just come up with any kind of story off the top of his head. It becomes such weird second nature for him.
Yeah, that's about building a family under ultimately a meth empire, and he knows it and she doesn't, and that's heart wrenching stuff. I think.
Do you guys think that Walt Jr. found out about Heisenberg too late in the story?
Well, that's an interesting question.
Because
I don't know, Alex. What do you think?
Um, you kind of wonder at times. I think he knew something was up, but it's just a case of, he didn't know what. But is what you're asking more, I guess, should he just narratively have found out earlier?
I'm just saying, like, do you think he needed to deal with it a little bit longer? Because the episode he finds out is also the episode where he saves his mother from Walt, and Walt runs away with Tolly. And his initial reaction to finding out is thinking it's all lies and kind of throwing a bit of a temper tantrum. And right after that, you see him being really defensive and protective of her mom and have no hesitation dialing the phone. I don't know. Maybe they need like one more episode where Walt Jr. kind of comes to terms with it, just so I can sympathize with him wanting to kick Walt out of the house.
Well, I can totally buy that being like adrenaline taking over. I mean, one of the things you got to remember is that he's been taking up for Walt the entire series.
Yeah.
Right.
And when he suddenly finds out that what was really going on, yeah, I don't know. I think I buy his reaction, but I hadn't thought about this until you brought that up. To your point, I do somewhat wonder, and obviously different people are different. There's a difference in experience here, and there's also a difference in ages here. But given that, given the reaction that Hank first had when he found out, it's hard to imagine that he could that Walt Jr. could process things at all when he finally finds out. Because remember, Hank nearly had a heart attack.
Yeah, exactly.
Like he couldn't drive his car.
Like
Well,
Walt
yeah,
Jr.
and
really comes to I'm on Walt's side for 5 seasons straight to I completely hate him, and there's just no middle ground.
Well, I don't. I wouldn't buy that there would be any middle ground. First of all, I think that again, part of it is an age thing. I mean, like your teenage son. I can kind of see that like extreme one side or the other kind of thing where it's my upbringing tells me that this is right and this is wrong. My mother shouldn't have done this to my father, and I don't have the whole story, but I don't need it. She shouldn't have done that. To wait, my dad had a meth empire. Okay, never mind. Kick him out. Like, nah, I buy that.
well, he just found out that his uncle was supposedly killed by his father too.
That's true.
That, yeah,
That's
you're
true.
right. That's most of it, isn't it?
But people, I don't know, like people have had to take, um, one parent's side over another before. I'm sure it's at some point, even about some kind of small thing, so they can probably relate. And
That's
the thing is too, like Walt kind of indulged his son quite a bit, especially later on with the car and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it. You can kind of buy that he would be, always leaning towards his father's side, and then it's just like, oh, even if he's not intellectually processing it, it's like, oh, he was buying me off, kind of a thing. And so yeah,
right.
it's just this.
Right.
It is a bit of a heel face turn, but it's kind of an understandable one.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. Well, problems aside though, like Walt Jr. and his not knowing throughout most of the series was really heart-wrenching also. Just seeing Walter trying to buy him to his side and Skylar trying to force him to his, and just the way Walt was trying to approve of his father with no real basis. Like his sole purpose for not liking his mom was that she put the car back, and his sole reason for loving his dad was that he got in the car anyway. So
Yeah.
there's just a lot of just heart wrenching stuff with that character just because he doesn't know, and you feel so bad for him near the end.
Mm-hmm.
I was a little surprised to come to care about him as much as I did.
Yeah, me too.
I thought he was ultimately fantastic, and kind of one of the more tragic characters by the end. You know that he's going to have to grow up with all that knowledge, and that's sad.
It is. Um, Jesse. I think I could write like an entire book on Jesse.
Oh God, yeah. Go ahead.
I don't even know where to start with that character. You mentioned that you really wanted to know what happened to him by the end. I was actually really satisfied with him just seeing him like cry of joy in the car and then we don't see him after that. Cause
Well, I just found it maddening not really knowing. And again, this isn't a criticism at all, but I found it maddening not knowing what that expression meant. I mean, it could be one of a lot of different things. Like even just what you said, a cry of joy. I don't know if it is. I don't know if that's it. If that's it. I mean, I think in the moment, yeah, it's a cry of joy. But like, what's he doing after that? Like, has this driven him crazy, or is he gonna go make a life for himself somewhere? Like, I don't know where that guy can go after this.
I think with the
yeah,
whole box thing, they
Seeing
were
it,
kind of hinting,
yeah,
like he has the opportunity now anyway to make a life for himself that he wanted, and he's not under Walt's thumb anymore. Because that's what I kind of interpreted that, his yell is sort of that. It's like this cathartic thing after all 5 seasons. He's finally released from that.
and I think the box is incredibly important. And that was I've talked to some other people about this, and they had forgotten about the story about him building the box early on, which I thought was one of the single most important things about his character.
Yeah.
That he had this one thing that he was proud of, and he sold it for drugs. And the only thing that he's done since then that he's even gotten remotely close to that feeling again is making drugs. And that's really sad. And then you get to the end, and the one thing we can be sure of is whether he gets picked up by cops or whatever happens. If he's not nuts, this hasn't driven him insane. And frankly, he doesn't kill Walt, so maybe he's not nuts. Perhaps we can read from that. We can infer from that that there still is enough sanity left there to make a whole person. We can at least be pretty sure that with the extremes that he's dealt with, getting over and over into making drugs and the people that's hurt and everything, he's never going to take drugs or sell them ever again.
yeah,
Oh
he has
yeah.
been traumatized by that. And he has that great last line of the show when he tells Walt that I want to hear it from you, and Walt tells him to kill him, and Jesse says to do it yourself.
Yeah, because he's basically saying, I'm not going to do what you tell me to do anymore.
Yeah,
He's finally
Jesse
standing
didn't
up
get
for
a lot of
himself.
dialogue that last episode, but when he said that, it kind of stole the show for me.
Well, that guy says so much with his face.
Yeah, Aaron Paul was a fantastic actor.
He's brilliant. Yeah, I was really impressed with him. Boy, he's come a long way from that bit part he had in the first episode of Birds of Prey.
Oh, I don't even remember that. Who did he play?
There was this kid. I'm almost positive this is who this is. There was this kid that invites Dinah to a party, and then she shows up and he tries to rape her.
Oh God.
That's
I'll
him.
have to go back and rewatch that.
And he was also on The
Yeah,
Price is Right at one point, I think.
yeah, I know. I saw that clip. It was hilarious. He was in Hollywood trying to make his life as an actor, and just a couple years before Breaking Bad, he was on Price is Right, and he got to meet Bob Barker.
Yeah, and yeah, he was in Birds of Prey. He played a guy named Jerry in the
Yep,
pilot.
told you.
Hmm.
but but anyway, yeah, all of I feel like he is a kid that wants to eventually grow up and have a family and be a normal person, and he doesn't know how to do that. It's like he looks up to Walter White because in a lot of ways Walt has what he wants, except he's never been able to figure out how to except Walt's never been able to figure out how to be happy with all of the things that essentially are wonderful in his life if he would just look at them right. And that's something that really spoke to me with his character is like Walt is actually by continuously manipulating him and forcing him into this life of drug trade and drug making, that he's making it harder and harder for him to ever put the stuff away and grow up and have a family like you'd like to have. And I saw that a lot with the way he dealt with his own family. I mean, like, he's got a nuclear family, and he's got this brother that looks like he's kind of like a genius, and it's like he kind of revolted against all of that, and yet I think that's ultimately kind of what he wants in the end, which you can kind of see with the way that he treats Brock and his mother.
Yeah.
I'm hoping he goes and raises Brock. If he doesn't get arrested at the end, I hope that's what he goes and does.
Well, that would be the kind of clear path to redemption, I think, given that he's ruined that kid's life.
Yeah.
Because everything that's happened is a direct to that kid is directly because of him. Hey, let's go off in left field for a moment and go round robin again. And besides Walt, because obviously that's the protagonist of the show. Besides Walt, who is your each of you guys' just straight up favorite character that you liked seeing on screen the most?
Um, Jesse's also an easy pick, so I gotta say Mike.
Oh, Mike was a great character ultimately, and I thought he was going to be a throwaway.
Yeah, so did I. He was only in for like 2 minutes on the couple seasons episodes, but when you got to him working with Walt and his allegiance to Gus, he turned into an amazing character. So much so
Yeah.
that even his blood type was like reflective of his character.
Wait, what?
Yeah, they mentioned that his blood type is O, and scientifically when you have that blood type, you can donate to everybody, but you can only receive from O. So there's not another person that could help Mike, but Mike is able to help everyone else, like whether it's Gus or Jesse or Walt.
Oh, that's really fascinating. I
Hmm.
never picked up on that.
It's
Cool.
just like one throwaway line of dialogue. I'm not even sure if they like intended for that to be what it meant, but it was there and I picked up on it.
Good on you for thinking of that. That's great, Steve. Alex, who's your favorite character?
Um, I'd have to go with Gus. Weirdly enough,
Oh, and I'm gonna second you on that. That's who I was gonna say.
there's something just so clever about the way he ran his empire. I mean, as horrible as all of that is,
I
um,
loved it. I mean, like, he ran it from a chicken place. Like, I love that.
he's just so understated, and I just hiding in plain sight. That's the way to do it. And Walt got too showy at times.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I feel like Gus was, in a lot of ways, what Walt really was aspiring to be. I felt like, in a lot of ways, Walt really looked up to that guy.
Hmm.
Because he's the completely and utterly confident guy that knows how to make this work and never get caught. I am convinced Gus would have never gotten caught.
I agree.
Probably not.
He doesn't. I don't think he had the pride that Walt had, though, and that was, kind of Walt's downfall, is he let things slip and stopped being as intellectual, and that's why he kept the book from Gale and stuff, and how everything unraveled.
Well, and what helped give Gus some dimension was the flashbacks from the late 80s where you found out that he was kind of forced into that life.
Hmm.
And I mean, the way I read that was that's never exactly what he wanted, and he found a way to make it work for him, and he sees a guy get killed in front of him, and he says that's not going to be me, and he takes over.
Yeah,
And
well, I
there's a
mean
lot,
that.
the actor's doing a lot with his eyes and just having that unstable backstory play into him. Like his ultimate mistake was just taking revenge on what's his name? The guy in the wheelchair.
Oh yes, I by the way, he's got to be the creepiest character in the show.
Oh yeah, he definitely has. But Gus having kept consistently taunting him was his biggest mistake. And when Gus in that episode Box Cutter, where he kills the guy with the box cutter, and then just has Walt and Jesse go back to work, that has got to be one of the creepiest things that character's ever had.
Yeah, it is, and that's one of the things that I've actually always been on the fence about.
Well, I
Is
I
when
always thought
would
that Gus did have that rage underneath the surface,
Yeah, and I
and
thought the
then
backstory helped with that.
yeah, and that explains why. I thought the box cutter thing worked, and like he showed Walt, like, I can be as ruthless as you think you are, and
And I
even
believe
more
that's the same
ruthless.
episode where Walt has that crazy laugh near the end.
well, and isn't that ultimately? showing how Walt is able to, and sometimes I think subconsciously, I don't think he always does this on purpose, how he's able to manipulate everybody to doing the exact opposite of what they normally would. Because remember, I think it's really important that when Saul first got him in contact with Gus, Gus tried really hard to have nothing to do with him.
Yeah, that's true, because he didn't think he was professional enough.
He wasn't professional enough. And then Walt pushes him to a point where he kills a guy himself. This is a guy that never gets his hands dirty.
Right.
I see.
And so like that's more of his manipulation. I think that's really interesting. But the reason I say I've always been on the fence about it is I like the idea, but I really wasn't sure I bought in the scene in the episode that he had been pushed enough to do that.
Oh, I think he was trying to make a point to Walt, because, Walt was sort of overstepping his bounds, like the guy who he killed.
Yeah,
And
and I
so
don't
he
think
was
that was
kind
the
of like
first time
sending a
Walt's done that.
message.
I guess I've gotten the impression that he had never really done anything like that before. But maybe I'm wrong about that. Like maybe when he gets maybe to proof points he will sometimes do things like that. But it just seemed like everybody around him was really surprised that he went that
Well, I
far.
mean, this is also the guy that poisoned himself along with an entire party of Mexican drug cartel people.
Yeah. No,
So, I mean, killing one guy with a box cutter doesn't seem like that much of a leap when you consider how many people he killed near the end of his life.
yeah, but he's so clean about it normally.
True.
I'm not. I mean, obviously he didn't do this right out in the open or whatever. But like, so I don't know. I'm a little on the fence about it. But it was. I mean, it was a powerful scene.
Although I gotta say, it's probably a credit to the show that they have these characters with so many dimensions that people could legitimately disagree about turns that they make.
Oh yeah.
What do you guys think about Hank?
Damn it, Marie, they're minerals.
Was there like a thematic point to the mineral thing?
I don't know. I was trying to think about that the other day, and I couldn't really come up with anything.
Yeah, same here. Someone asked me about like, does the mineral play into anything later on? I just couldn't give them an answer because I didn't know.
Oh yeah, I've never really read into that.
I don't know. It just looked a little bit weird that he has this obsession with minerals.
I mean, it seemed like that was kind of story wise just there so that ultimately he could have an excuse to go out and try to find the the laundry place.
Maybe. I shouldn't think about that.
You know what I mean? Because that's ultimately what they used it for. I mean, I don't know if they were thinking that when they planted it to begin with, because he was doing that for several episodes before they got there.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, the story purpose it serves, just mechanically, is well, he's got to have an alibi about where he is when he goes and stakes that place out because he's not supposed to be doing that. So he tells his wife that they're going to that museum or whatever it was,
Yeah.
or I think a rock show. I think it was a not a rock show, but a show about minerals. They were gonna go see a Pink Floyd reunion band.
I liked how Hank's character grew as the show went on, and at the start he's just kind of like this sort of typical jock kind of a guy, and we hear like he works for the DEA, and we hear that he's this really good DEA agent, but we finally start to see that as the show goes on, and he's ultimately the one who,
Yeah, he's a little bit
discovers Walt.
showboaty. He's a little bit showboaty, but you see that he has a reason for being so kind of egotistic about his own abilities because he has the skills to back it up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he has the skills, and then it makes a lot of sense why he feels so totally embarrassed about not being able to find Heisenberg, who lives next door to him and is his family. I mean, I was really impressed with the show for making that work
Yeah, definitely.
because he's ultimately that like kind of. I'm trying to think of a good example. He's kind of that classic, like cop that's trying to find the secret identity of the main character, and it kind of plays up how stupid he is
Well,
for not
it
ever
is
being
kind
able
of
to.
like a sitcom premise of like, chemistry teacher actually makes drugs, and his brother-in-law is a DEA agent, and like that sounds like it could be a comedy show, but they actually made that into a drama, which is interesting.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, if you look at, and I know that this is a like kind of a bad guy instead of a hero sort of thing. But if you look at things like, and I know I bring this up way too much, but if you look at things like Smallville, where you have all of these characters that can't figure out that Clark Kent has superpowers just because the show doesn't want them to, and they just conveniently get knocked out all the time, so they don't actually use his powers. And then you look at Hank, like it's night and day. Like it ultimately, I thought going through it, I totally bought Hank never figuring it out that Walt was that good at covering his tracks.
Yeah, they made it work.
Did you guys think that the whole like initials in the book thing was enough to tip him off?
I think so.
I really liked that. I was surprised that I thought that worked.
Yeah, I
I
thought it
mean, he
worked.
has those points where Hank thinks he caught Heisinger before, but Walt puts him on his trail again just because of his ego.
Yeah.
You have that Walt is the guy who actually told him about the Walt Whitman thing, and Walt even says the thing has a line where he says he has a bag full of money where he actually does, but Hank thinks it's a joke. So I think they did enough little
Oh, does
jokey
he
things
actually
in the
tell him
show
where
to
it
make it
is?
work.
Does he actually tell him where it is?
Huh?
You said he's got a bag of money and he tells him where it is?
You mean the
Really?
episode where Walt's moving out of his house and he has like these giant duffel bags of money and Hank tells him like what's in these things and then Walt's like just a bag of money and Hank thinks it's a joke.
Oh, yeah, I remember that now.
Yeah, like they just do these little comedic things that eventually all pay off.
Well, and then of course there's the obvious famous now moment where he's thinking of WWs and he says Walter White and he says, "Ah, you got me." I mean, like he's constantly doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Walt's ego plays a lot into why he gets caught by Hank.
Well, I can see why you'd say that, but I also think that it's like he's doing a decent job of putting him off the trail just by hiding in plain sight. I think he's pretty consistent about it because Hank has no reason to think that he's capable of those sorts of things.
Yeah, that's true.
On the other hand, he does do enough things that seem out of the ordinary that I don't know that Hank would think, oh, he's would make the leap, oh, he's the guy I'm after, but like maybe he needs help or hospitalization or something. Like when he crashes into another car on the way to the laundry place, because I don't know how Hank could have read that as anything but he did it on purpose.
Yeah. Although wasn't Hank also still injured at that point?
He was,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
maybe he just like wasn't thinking about it in that sense.
Well, that's possible. I mean, yeah, it helps to distract people by giving them injuries.
I was actually surprised at how long they kept Hank injured.
Well, I mean, to your earlier point, considering that the thing only takes place over a year, I mean, it only happens over a year. It's a good thing that they did that.
Yeah, I mean that's still a problem for me that it only took place over a year, but like you could believe that he was on a recovery path for that entire year. And even by the end of the series, he's still not like walking completely normally.
So I don't mean to harp on this, but I'm just curious: is the issue that you don't think that that like his drug empire could have been built the way it is in that short of a time, or is it just that like too many things happen?
It's not that too many things happens, it's that the name Heisenberg should I don't think it should be as big as it is.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Like they don't say the name Heisenberg enough or spread that word around enough for me to believe that in just 1 year, anyone who comes in contact with blue meth would just instantly think Heisenberg.
But you don't think that the series of events couldn't happen over a
No, no,
year?
I don't think that. I think that works perfectly naturally. It's just
Oh, okay, okay, okay. See, I thought you were talking about the series of events.
like the
That's why.
blue meth is being marketed through Gus through most of the series.
Yeah.
So Heisenberg's name would never come into anyone's mouth except for when he's working with Tuco.
Well, maybe that song that those Mexicans were singing just got really popular. Maybe that was like a chart topper or something.
Maybe.
Well, we've been at this almost an hour. What other stuff? I'm sure there's a million things that we haven't touched on that we could or we ought to. What other things did you guys really were just burning to discuss that we haven't gotten to?
Todd, maybe?
That's a good one.
All right, yeah, go ahead, do it up.
Okay, Todd was a complete psychopath.
Oh yeah, he
Um,
was not.
That
I
act,
also didn't expect that character to turn into as big of a thing as he was.
yeah, he seems so subtle. The first appearance was when they were doing the when they were working with the exterminators. Which, by the way, I really like those episodes because when Walt and Jesse acted like they were best friends, they acted it so well, but knowing behind the scenes has made it so heart-wrenching.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, back to Todd. When Jesse kills Todd, um, right before that, Todd is starting to dress like Walter, and he's doing all these like really polite things and speaking so properly, but he's still a complete psychopath. Like killing comes naturally to him. He pulls out guns and shoots kids, and doesn't hesitate to kill what's her name? The girl that Jesse's dating and Brock's mother.
Yeah.
He doesn't
Andrea.
even give her time to process what he says before he kills her. And he has no hesitations about holding Jesse down in that pit. By the end of the series, I kind of thought that maybe Todd was just like a symbol for what Heisenberg is, being this completely cold, calculating, this merciless monster. And when Jesse chokes him out, that's the end of Heisenberg. That this cold-blooded killing and this series of just unfortunate lies that Walt manipulates, he just can't do it anymore.
And oddly, that's maybe one of the most optimistic things that they did, because Todd would not have become as active and sadistic as he was if it hadn't been for trying to live up to Walter.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, like he exists in the way he does because of Walter. He's influenced him in a major way, and so Jesse comes in. So like in a lot of ways, and maybe I'm reading too much into this by saying it this way, but it's like Todd is like unintentionally his like Walter's protege in a way that Walt kind of saw Jesse as his protege, but Jesse ultimately resisted that because he didn't want to be this evil sadistic person. And so you've got Jesse stopping that protege from turning into the monster that Walter never actually became, but Todd could have become. I mean, that's really interesting.
It is.
Yeah, one of the really sadistic things I thought Todd did too was putting the picture of Brock and his mother down there when Jesse was making the meth.
And then he just says, "Let's cook," like it's nothing.
Well,
Yeah,
do you think that was sadism or just Todd not having any kind of understanding of like social things? Because we sort of see that from him too. And I kind of
with the
thought it
ice
was
cream.
like, it's like a desk place picture of your family. And that's the way that like Todd would view it in his warped mind.
You think? Because I really saw that as, okay, I don't even have to tell you that if you don't do this, we're gonna kill these people. It's just here's this picture, and you know what that means.
Well,
And
I read
because
it that way too.
ultimately they go kill those people, or they go kill one of those people.
Yeah, that's true.
And
Um,
I guess more to your point, Alex, when he
Well,
talks to Jesse inside that hole, he talks to him like they're still best friends.
yeah,
yeah, that's the thing I was
and don't forget
referencing.
about the ice cream.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Just like weird lines like that.
I thought it.
Well, that's I think that's all him though, like kind of Heisenberg-esque trying to manipulate people, where he gives them whatever he thinks they need at the time.
Maybe
Maybe.
I just saw Todd as really awkward, especially when it came to Lydia, who he had a crush on, and he didn't really know, how to approach her at
I
all.
love how that last moment when he's dead, his ringtone is a song with Lydia.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was great.
I liked
Um,
I liked that Jesse was referred to as the rabid dog, and then he like literally gets put on a leash. I just found that weirdly hilarious in a sick way.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that.
yeah, that was wrong.
I remember seeing that for the first time. I was like, oh my, like, ugh, these are like Nazis.
Yeah, they were definitely Nazis. Well, and the show would keep doing things like that too, where I'd be like, Tuco has got to be the absolute most twisted, like unempathetic human being I've ever seen, and then they totally trumped Tuco with the Nazis.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Like I didn't think you could get any worse than that guy, but there you go. And also, more broadly, this is something that I probably should have even said at the beginning. This is a show that I shouldn't have liked, because I usually don't go in for stories that are anything remotely about drug culture. Like, that usually is a huge turnoff for me right away.
And Jesse was kind of the epitome of that drug culture, of where how people like that talk, or how they dress, or just their personality. And he ultimately becomes probably the most sympathetic character of the entire series.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Um, it's a really uncomfortable subject matter from like the first couple episodes.
Oh, it's uncomfortable the whole way through. I don't think I ever became comfortable watching it, which is the reason I couldn't turn away from it.
Like a train wreck.
Yeah, and then of course there's the train.
Yeah,
That was cool. That was like a western.
That was such a great episode. And by the way, that's the moment where you find out just how messed up in the head Todd is.
I mean, when Todd just pulls out that gun and shoots him without even uttering a word, like I didn't have a second to process that there was a kid there before Todd shot him.
I didn't either.
Um,
And yet, oddly, it's a show that has a lot of humor in it. Not laugh out loud funny or anything, but they'll do things where I'm just like, that's really clever and funny. And I don't know how the show is able to have any levity at
you
all.
mean like Walter finally learning to roll the barrel by the end?
Yeah, somebody had to point that out to me. I didn't even think of that, but that was cool. Yeah, I mean, those sort of subtle things are cool, but there's other more obvious things like pizza on the roof.
Yeah.
Apparently Bryan Cranston got that done in one take.
Pizza on the roof is hilarious. And I mean, it plays for. That's the thing, is that all the things that I would call funny, because that's not even the right word, but like all the things that I would call kind of humorous, always play into the show in some kind of dramatic sort of way. Like there's that episode where they try to kill that fly, and the whole episode is played up for comedy, I thought, and then you get to the last 10 minutes, and you get like this really heart wrenching speech that turns it into one of the darker shows.
Yeah,
It's very
definitely.
absurd in that way. And that's what I like about it.
Well, but I think real life is that way. That's
Yeah,
that's I mean that's
exactly.
about it is yeah, it feels absurd, but then you think about it and you go, no, real life is like that.
Yeah.
There's a speaking of the thing with the fly, that is a symbol that goes kind of throughout the show, and I'm not entirely sure how I'm supposed to read it.
What do you mean?
Well, I just mean like I think that there's some kind of symbolism going on with the fly, and I'm not exactly sure what it is concretely.
Yeah, I haven't quite figured that out. Like some stuff is really obvious, like where he thinks there's like mold and rot underneath the house, and like that's pretty obvious what that's a metaphor for. But yeah, the fly was a little bit more subtle.
Yeah, it's a little more ambiguous, but I think there's got to be something solid going on there because they did a whole episode about it, and then it kept coming up. I mean, there's at least one episode that opens with Walt staring at a fly, and it's calling back to that, and I'm like, there's a metaphor here, and I don't know what it is.
Maybe it's exactly what you just mentioned about how life is that simple or life is that random. Like with that fly, the fly is extremely fragile, but it's still a nuisance. So just this one tiny insignificant fly, like Walter, just this one tiny insignificant middle-aged man, could cause so much distress to get an entire episode or interrupt Walt's lab experiment, or just be something so small could turn into such a huge problem.
I think you're spot on. I think that's exactly what it is.
Or it could also be just like I've heard someone mention this before, that the fly is almost like Walt's conscience. Like there's this little speck of him that wants to be redeemed that he's not listening to, and he just keeps fighting against it.
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, but I think both of those things could be going on.
That's the cool thing about the show, is that everything could be like double entendres or just completely ambiguous. Like the teddy bear, for instance, like that teddy bear in season 2, when the eye that keeps showing up in season 3.
Yeah, that was creepy.
It was.
Q should be a better air traffic controller.
Oh yeah, that was John Delancey, and he was great. And I kept thinking, man, I wish he had gotten a part that was a little less deadpan because it's John Delancey.
Yeah.
But it was kind of fun to see him, and but yeah, you're right. it's hard to imagine that they were letting him do that job after what he had gone through.
Yeah,
Well, there's some kind of line about he he had a little bit of time off, but he decided to come into work because he wanted to work, but
I
clearly
think they
it.
even had like a conversation with his supervisor saying that he wanted to get back to work.
Boy, it never. That was a scary moment for me watching that show where I was like, wow, I didn't realize just the enormous amount of power air traffic controllers have.
Yeah, it's got to be
Yeah,
a
it's a little
really tough
scary.
job.
God, you make any mistake at all, like you can tell why that guy's wealthy because you better pay him well, because that sounds like a horrible job.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, I just mean like the responsibility of it. Like you can't make any mistakes.
Nope.
No, it was really scary. Like I didn't think the show was ever going to have something as big as a plane crash, but then you see how simple a plane crash could really be.
Yeah, I mean, I could see some people thinking maybe that it went too far by doing that, but they did a good job of not making it too contrived, like where it landed or how and all of that. I think.
I still thought like it fitted with the show perfectly. Like the only reason the plane crashed is because of these little personal matters that all stem from Walter and Jesse's drug operation. So it still has that same focus. It's just the consequences sometimes are really small or sometimes really huge. Hence the plane crash.
There's one other major character that we've not discussed at all that I feel like we would be remiss in not bringing up, and that's Saul, of course. Do you guys find him kind of the comic relief of the show?
Yeah.
Um, I think that he is the comic relief, but there's still some deeper stuff going on with him.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I enjoyed his presence ultimately, and I thought I would find him super annoying at the beginning. And there's a lot of as Alex said, absurd, quirky stuff going on with it because I love all the phones in the drawer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, his whole
That's
office, really.
is the most ludicrous thing you've ever seen.
And that moment when Walt and Jesse try to shoot him and have masks on, and he just keeps talking to them and notices Walt's cough. That whole scene's hilarious.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the moment where I realized that they were gonna like do stuff with that character
Hmm.
Yeah, and I love how
because
Salt's the person to finally tell Heisenberg that he's finished.
yeah.
That's just a great way to handle him. And then Saul just kind of gives up by the end of that series.
Well, I was always surprised, given you know, who Saul was, that he went along with Walt for as long as he did. And I'm not like again that's not a criticism. I kept waiting for the moment where he would be like, "Nah, I'm done with this."
And he tried once or twice, didn't he?
Well, that's true, and I mean he's got that in common with everybody else Walter ever had contact with. Like people don't know how to say no to that guy.
No, and like Saul got so bad that he even started hiring bodyguards and stuff, but he still can't break away from Walt.
So there is a lot of talk about them doing a prequel show with him, and I have no interest in that.
They already greenlit it, didn't they?
Have they greenlit it?
Yeah, I think they did.
What do you guys think about that?
I'm not really interested.
If it was a sequel, I'd be interested, but I don't know, like how much could you really do with that character as a prequel until we get to
That's
the point that he starts in Breaking Bad.
yeah. I mean, I don't know that I need to see like his rise to lawyerness.
I mean,
Well,
there was a
I
rumor
can
going
see how
around.
it I can see how it could work like as a show. Like he's this lawyer for all the criminals and stuff, and you have all kinds of interesting, colorful characters, coming through his door every week, but I don't
I'd
know
see
that I
that
need
more
to
as like a
see that.
22-minute comedy and not like a 40-minute drama.
Well, I
Yeah.
guess part of the reason, yeah. Well, and he's been also playing a lawyer on How I Met Your Mother, so they could totally do that. Like they could just give him some.
Oh, I wasn't aware he was in that show.
Yeah, and he's pretty much a goofy version of that same character.
Hmm.
There
As a
was a
lawyer.
rumor going around that it was going to be like Saul was actually a really good and lawyer with a lot of integrity, and that eventually he was going to become what we see in Breaking Bad. But if they did that as a series, wouldn't it just be Breaking Bad light?
Possibly,
Yeah.
but that sounds a little more interesting than what I was picturing. um, but I don't know. I guess the big reason I say I don't really have any interest in it is because if you're gonna spin this series off at all, I'd rather see some kind of a sequel. But it's the sort of thing where I don't know that I need more stories in this universe. But B, it's not gonna last. Like I don't see that show lasting more than 12 episodes or a season.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I gotta agree with that.
It's one of those things where I kind of feel like, if a lot of people tout it up as being great, maybe I'll watch it, but then I figure we'll all be that way, and then it won't have any viewership, and then it'll get canceled.
Well, Burn Notice like had like a spin-off movie with just one of their characters. So they had like a mini series with Saul Goodman, or just like a 60-minute or 70-minute movie. I'd be okay with it.
Oh, that'd be cool. Yeah.
Like there's nothing big, but just like a one small final story with that character.
If they had announced a Jesse sequel, I could have been totally on board with that.
Oh yeah, me too. Although I wonder how long that would last.
Well, me too. But the thing was, like, I really expected Jesse to die at the end.
I was actually one of the people that hoped he was gonna die, because if you torture that guy anymore, it's just not gonna be fair.
Well, that's true, but by killing Walt, you're making it less likely. The only thing that can torture him after Walt is dead is him.
Yeah, I'm surprised that he actually got to live though.
Oh, I was too. I was really surprised by that.
I actually thought that when the Nazis had him cornered and right before they killed Brock's mom, I thought they were gonna kill him right there.
Well, and that's another thing that we haven't really discussed very much, is how completely unpredictable that show was. Like, I could never call anything.
And even if you could, like the emotional resonance would just stop you from thinking about it.
Well, that's true. I guess I'm engaging in hyperbole. There's a couple things here and there I called. Like poisoning what's her face at the end was pretty obvious.
Oh yeah, they really telegraphed Lydia's death.
They did.
And I got to tell you, I didn't really care for that very much, because I wasn't sure that Lydia had been given enough of a role that she deserved that, like, big, Heisenberg planned death like that.
Yeah, I gotta agree. Like that Ryson was there for a couple seasons.
Such a big deal out of the Ryson, and we had already seen it in a flashback in the trunk and everything, and all the fans were saying, okay, who's the gun for, who's the Ryson for, what's this for? And then the Ryson was so obvious because she kept ordering the same thing at that restaurant.
I think it was
But
just Walt trying to tie up loose ends, really.
Okay, well, because from an earlier conversation Alex and I had, I get the sense Alex likes Lydia more than I do.
Uh,
I
Not
was
really.
okay with Lydia.
Oh, okay. I'm not saying I dislike her or anything. It's just she was one of the few characters that I didn't feel like had enough. I'm not even gonna say not enough to mention, but because I think that she served her story purpose. But I don't know. She just like didn't. It wasn't somebody that I was real, interested in.
There was a point in that series where Lydia was the new Gus, but she wasn't a strong enough person to handle the emotional stress the way Gus did. So I thought
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
stuff was kind of interesting, but they never.
That's fair, but they never really did much with it. I mean, she's really paranoid, and you can't be that way.
Yeah,
Or at
exactly.
least, well, she's paranoid in the wrong way. Gus is also paranoid, right? You have to be.
Yeah, but Gus didn't show it. Like Lydia telegraphs it.
That's what's so important. Gus would have never walked into a place with giant sunglasses.
No.
Which, by the way, those were hilarious.
Oh, they were.
She'd walk into a place, and then the whole, like, back-to-back talking to each other thing, that is the most conspicuous possible way to have a conversation.
And I love how when Mike first meets her in the series, he just keeps ruining her plans of trying to hide. Like, tells her to take the sunglasses off, and instead of sitting back to back, he just sits right in front of her and starts talking.
I feel like Breaking Bad is just a series of like pointers about how to not do illegal business stupidly.
Well, I mean, it's like Lydia is trying to do like the Hollywood version of it, and then everybody around her is like, that doesn't work in real life.
Oh, that's a great way to put it, Alex. Yeah, it's like she saw way too many movies.
And
Yeah.
she kind of parallels Walt in his early days, where he didn't know how the practical drug business worked, and he just kind of had like a grand idea of it. Except it worked a little bit better in Walt's favor, and Lydia just never adapted.
Yeah, I just thought of something because this is another show that has all of these setups and flashbacks and flash forwards, although not nearly as many as Lost did. And like people were throughout the series making all of these predictions about what was happening, what was going to happen with it. A lot of people were comparing it to Lost, and it just occurred to me that there are a couple of things that it weirdly has in common with that show. The biggest one being that everything revolves around a chicken place.
I never noticed that.
Yeah, that's funny. Because Hurley in the Numbers was about him buying a chicken place.
Um, you know how series like these always hype up the endings, and then even if they're good, like I thought Breaking Bad's ending was pretty good, people still are disappointed because they toed it up as being like the greatest thing ever. Do you think even if that last episode was bad, that you would still think the whole series was really worth watching?
I'm gonna say, yeah, I still would have, and a lot of that again is because of the experience I had with Lost. Because I loved that show to pieces, and I, along with a lot of people, was somewhat disappointed with the finale just because there were so many things I wanted to know that we never got to know, and I think I liked it more than a lot of people did. But yeah, I've still gone back and rewatched that show because I love it for the things I love about it. So yeah, if Breaking Bad had I don't know, the wrong ending, I think I still would have enjoyed the things I enjoyed about it. Which is contrary to what I thought I would have with both of those shows. Because when I watched Lost, I went through that whole show going, okay, I don't know where this is going, but that last episode is going to completely make or break my feelings about the show. And then ultimately it didn't. But like I think that Breaking Bad had an easier time at wrapping up than something like Lost because it did have a lot of little pieces that it had to wrap up and tell you about, but it was more of an intimate show and it was
Right.
centered on the person and that sort of thing. So yeah, I don't know, when you get to the end of that show, what would they have had to do to ruin it for people, to completely and utterly ruin that show for people? The big one I think is Walt lives and doesn't have cancer at the end. But that never would have happened.
No, that wouldn't have worked at all. I think by the episode Ozymandias, I just stopped caring whether or not the next few episodes were good or not because everything leading up to that point was just so emotionally charged and so well written that even
Yeah,
if
I
the
can totally see
final
that.
two episodes didn't live up, it wouldn't matter.
Yeah, I can get how people gave their hopes up and maybe didn't know what they wanted, but the last episode didn't give it to them. But I'm trying to think of what it would have had to have done, or what it could have done, like realistically, what I would buy Vince Gilligan coming up with, where I would be like, no.
Walt and Jesse living happily ever after together.
Yeah,
Like
that would have been
Jesse has no mental scars whatsoever. Everything's okay. Just Walt, Jesse, and Brock living nice happily together.
like if they had done something really kind of far fetched, but totally engaging and blew your mind, could you have still lived with it given how like kind of grounded a lot of that show was? Like Walt Jr. becomes Heisenberg.
Maybe he was Heisenberg all along.
I don't think he was, Alex.
I mean, I don't know. It could be like that Legion of Professor X thing where he's controlling him in the background.
Your reaction to that was priceless. Oh.
Well, yeah, so be a little Mandarinish.
You're right, that's exactly what that would be like. Well, anyway, did you guys have any other big things that we didn't get to talk about?
Um, this isn't a big thing, but the Breaking
Okay,
Bad
did you have
music.
any other little things that you want to draw this out some more?
Well, this is
Is-
quick. I just want to mention that the music is
oh, you're
amazing.
fine. Oh, yeah, yeah, it has a great score.
Hmm.
Like I think it's the second last episode where they play the Breaking Bad theme and you see the little glass on the bar. Right before the episode fades to black. Like that whole music sequence is really, really nice.
And I think it's neat that they saved it until then, because if memory serves, there's not a single point in the series where they bring in that music as score.
No, I don't think they do.
I thought this show had really great montages.
Yeah, and I usually hate montages.
Yeah, you're right about that. I didn't even notice.
And it had a lot of really interesting cinematography and camera shots and stuff too. They really liked
Yeah.
the POV shots a lot.
And I
That
always
was
loved how there would always be a character and their reflection. You would always see like either an overturned reflection of Walt or just Walt looking in a mirror, and you just see like the duality in the shots.
yeah, Yeah, and the pacing was so interesting to Alex, to your point about cinematography, because that played a lot into this. That was a show where in 45, 50 minutes, you'd have like 6 scenes.
Yeah.
Like I've never seen a show paced like that. And I mean, like they could put a camera in a place and not move it, and have Walt or some other character just standing there staring at a wall for 3 minutes, and I would be completely riveted. They did that all the time.
Well, yeah, and they did that a lot, and without even people talking at times. It's just,
That's what I'm
yeah,
saying.
I'm thinking of a lot of like the breakfast scenes and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, they were really good at those kind of awkward moments, and I often don't like awkward comedy, but there would be like these really tense, awkward, dramatic moments.
There's that episode where Jesse, Walt, and Skylar are having dinner together, and Jesse keeps trying to make conversation, and it's just awkward tension all around. That whole
Yeah,
scene played really well.
the way they used the camera in that scene had a lot to do with that too, because I think that was like a wide angle kind of shot.
I think it was. Um,
Well, Alex, you've been somewhat quiet. Was there any big thing that you wanted to talk about that we didn't talk about?
Not that I can think of. Gus had a really. Do we want to maybe finish off with deaths? Who had the best death? Because I thought
No, that's great.
Gus's was
That's
really
great.
tremendous.
yeah, Gus had a great death.
Yeah, and wasn't it really important that that effect worked? Because if that fell apart,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
well, good night, folks. We just discussed the best death.
Well, Mike had a pretty good death.
Yeah, and I like that Hank went out as in a big kind of heroic sort of death.
Yeah, I love how Hank's last line to Walt is that he's the smartest man he's ever met, but he's too stupid to see that he made up his mind 10 minutes ago.
Oh, that's a great line.
Hank had a lot of great moments. It's kind of sad to see that he was just buried out in the desert for a whole episode or two.
Longer than that, I think.
I think Ozymandias was like the third to last episode, and then Walt
Oh,
makes
A
the
couple
deal the
episodes,
last
but
episode.
yeah, that
yeah,
was a really long time. There wouldn't be a whole lot left of him.
well,
Yeah,
and I appreciate that they didn't kill Hank off earlier than that, because I felt like he was a major anchor for the show. Like I mean, obviously he wasn't a perfect person. He had a lot of depth to him, which I appreciated. You could see the obvious flaws in this guy, but ultimately, especially in the way that he dealt with his wife. But ultimately, I found him to be kind of the most down to earth person in the whole show.
yeah. I think morally he's the person that you could follow faster than anyone else in the series.
I mean, it helps that Cop is often just naturally the hero in the thing.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that plays into it, but like even when Hank lost his temper, I would still to a degree be on his side.
Well, yeah, that's true. Well, and you would be sympathetic toward him. I mean, like he was really really short with Marie over and over again when he was laid up, but you could understand his frustration because he was the only person that was positive that this Heisenberg guy is still out there and he needs to catch him, and his legs don't work.
Right.
So you can appreciate it. I mean, like I think that a temper like with, and that's something that he and Walt have in common. Having such a temper is obviously in his personality, but there was more at play there than just he doesn't like being an invalid. It was also, this guy's out there and I got to get him and nobody believes me.
And they could have really stretched that thing with Hank knows Walt's secret for like the last half of the whole season. But the
Oh,
the episode that as soon as he figures it out, by the end of that episode, he confronts Walt about it, and he even goes far as to punch him in the face. And that whole
yeah, and
conversation they have is just really gripping.
I found maybe one of the like it'd be fun to go back and watch this again and write down like some top 5 or 10 lists, like top 5 tensest moments,
Yeah.
because the show is
Yeah.
all about action. And one of the tensest moments is waiting for that garage door to close.
Oh
Hmm.
yeah, definitely.
I always felt really bad for that kid with the remote control car
Yeah.
because he was always around when like these really confusing tense situations would happen, and he's just trying to play with his car. And then there's that one episode where it gets run over.
Hmm.
And I was like, wow, that kid.
That poor kid.
He's that kid in The Incredibles that watches Mr. Incredible break his car. Like he's that kid. Only in the middle of a drug show. So it's different.
So not at all.
So actually, not at all. Well, anyway, are we good? Have we explored this pretty well?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so too. It annoyed me that the 5th season was split in half, but that's okay.
Why did that annoy you? I never really understood the logic behind that.
Yeah, it was just because I was watching it as it aired. So, or at least I watched season 5 as it aired. So when season 5's first half ended, and then you had to wait so long to get the second half when it was just one season length anyway. Like everyone thought it was season 6, but no, it was still season 5 for no reason.
Yeah, I don't know why they did. I still don't know why they did. There has to be a reason. I mean, maybe they had to halt production for some reason or something.
Maybe, but just like having to wait that long is kind of inconvenient.
Yeah, I mean, I had a different experience with it because I had been told forever that I should watch this show, and it was about meth, and I didn't care. And then finally, somebody taught me, and I don't even remember how I finally went. Fine, I'll watch it, okay? And then I watched the first episode, and I went, holy crap, this is really interesting. And I binge watched everything that was on Netflix at that point in like a week and a half, and I'm sitting here trying to make Spawn here, and all I want to do is watch Breaking Bad, and but I timed it really well on accident because I had no idea while I was watching it that it was about to be the last half of the last season, and it was almost over. I didn't even know that, and finally I heard about it, and I was like, oh wow, I've got like 3 episodes left to finish before the first episode of the end of season 5 starts, like in 3 days. Fantastic. So then I watched those, and I got to watch the last 8 episodes in real time, which was kind of fun actually.
Yeah. Seeing those last episodes air and every minute just gripping you was a really good experience.
The saddest thing for me was the week after that. It got to Sunday, and I went, oh,
Yeah.
that show's.
Oh yeah, me too.
It's like, isn't there something I'm supposed to be doing right now?
Well, I have to go I live on the 9th floor of my college dorm, so I have to go all the way down to the basement to watch TV. So I went all the way down to the basement that Sunday and realized, oh wait, Breaking Bad isn't on today.
You walked 9 floors and went, wait a minute.
Yeah, exactly. I climbed 9 floors of stairs and realized Breaking Bad isn't on today.
We're still in withdrawal from the blue meth.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, there's at least a couple other shows on that I'm watching, but
I mean, Arrow, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but Breaking
it's
Bad.
that. Yeah.
I like Boardwalk Empire.
That's a really good show. Mad Men's also really great.
Mm-hmm.
I lost interest in that about the 3rd season.
I didn't get to the 3rd season. I only have the first 2, but I really did like the first 2.
It's on Netflix.
Yeah, I just haven't gotten a chance to see all of it yet.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what happened with that show. Like, I can't even articulate why I stopped watching it, but I got to a point where I just lost total interest in
Well,
it.
I heard like the latest season involved had talked about the Vietnam War really subtly, so I'm really interested to see that.
Yeah, that is interesting. That's a good cast.
Oh yeah, John Hamm is amazing.
Weren't there a lot of people that thought he should be Batman?
Yeah, a lot of people
he's
thought
been
he should be
cast
Batman.
for like every superhero ever.
Yeah, he did a parody video with him as Lex Luthor. People thought he should be Superman. People think he should be Batman, but I don't think he's the superhero guy.
Yeah, I never would have thought of that until people started saying it. But anyway, well, I think that about wraps it up for us. Everybody, thanks as always for listening to our podcast, and thank you guys for doing the special with me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
That was fun. Come back anytime. Alex, you got to come back on the channel more often, man.
Yeah, we'll do. May have to tread lightly though.
Everybody, thanks a lot for listening. I'm Captain Logan, and we had Steve, we had Alex. We appreciate you guys. Thanks a lot.